The golden age of Hollywood shone brightly with stars who seemed to have everything: fame, wealth, and acclaim. Yet behind the glamour, many iconic actors and singers faced personal struggles that led them to die in poverty. In this video, we explore the poignant stories of legends like Judy Garland and Marie Prevost, whose lives ended in financial ruin despite their immense talent. Their tales reveal the harsh realities hidden behind the spotlight, reminding us that success can be fleeting, and the price of fame can be devastating. Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi, forever remembered as the chilling Count Dracula, was once one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. His portrayal of the vampire in the 1931 classic defined horror for generations. But behind the fame, Lugosi faced struggles that would eventually leave him in ruin. Hollywood typecast him so severely that meaningful roles became scarce. As younger stars rose, offers dwindled, and Lugosi was forced into low-budget films that barely paid his bills. On top of this, he battled a severe addiction to morphine and painkillers, which further damaged his health and reputation. Despite his legendary status, Lugosi lived modestly in his final years, often depending on friends for financial help. When he passed away in 1956 at the age of 73, he was nearly penniless, a tragic fate for a man who had once terrified millions on screen. Today, his legacy lives on, but his end remains a sobering reminder of Hollywood's cruelty. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, the unforgettable star of The Wizard of Oz, seemed to embody Hollywood magic. With her powerful voice and innocent charm, she became one of MGM's brightest stars, earning millions during her career. Yet, behind the screen, Garland's life was far from a fairy tale. From a young age, she was placed under intense studio control, given pills to keep her awake, slim her figure, and then more to sleep. This dependency followed her into adulthood, fueling personal struggles and unstable relationships. Despite her enormous talent and box office success, Garland spent recklessly, faced mounting debts, and was often exploited by those around her. By the late 1960s, her health had deteriorated, and she performed in small clubs just to survive. In 1969, at only 47 years old, Garland tragically died in London, leaving behind little money but an enduring legacy as one of Hollywood's most beloved yet tragic figures. Marie Prevost. Marie Prevost was once one of the most charming faces of the silent film era. Beginning her career as a Mack Sennett bathing beauty, she quickly rose to stardom in the 1920s, known for her wit, beauty, and screen presence. But with the arrival of sound films, her career began to falter. Roles became scarce, and as her fame slipped away, so did her financial stability. Struggling with depression, Prevost turned to alcohol, which further damaged her career and health. By the mid-1930s, she was living in near poverty, forgotten by the very industry that had once celebrated her. Tragically, in January 1937, she was found dead in her modest Los Angeles apartment at just 38 years old. Her death was discovered only after neighbors complained of her dog's constant barking. Marie Prevost's heartbreaking decline is a stark reminder of how quickly Hollywood can abandon its stars once the spotlight fades. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was one of the most dazzling stars of the 1940s, instantly recognizable for her signature, peekaboo, hairstyle that inspired countless women during World War II. She starred alongside major leading men in classics like Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire, earning a reputation as one of Hollywood's most glamorous femme fatale. But her fame, like her hairstyle, eventually faded. Known for being difficult on set and struggling with alcoholism, Lake saw her career quickly decline in the 1950s. Roles dried up, and her personal life unraveled with multiple divorces and financial troubles. At one point, she was forced to take work as a cocktail waitress in New York, shocking fans who once saw her as a screen goddess. By the time of her death in 1973 at just 50 years old, Lake was living in near poverty. Her story remains one of Hollywood's most haunting downfalls. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday, known as Lady Day, was one of the most influential jazz singers of all time. With a voice full of pain, soul, and beauty, she transformed songs like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child into timeless classics. Yet, behind her success, Holiday endured a life marked by hardship. From a troubled childhood, she carried deep emotional scars into adulthood. She battled racism, abusive relationships, and an ongoing struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. Despite her fame, she was repeatedly targeted by authorities, even arrested in her hospital bed as she fought for her life. Exploited financially by managers and lovers, Holiday was left with almost nothing. When she died in 1959 at just 44 years old, she had less than $1,000 to her name. Though she passed away in poverty, her haunting voice and raw honesty cemented her as one of the greatest legends in American music history. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton, often called the Great Stone Face, was one of the most brilliant comedians of the silent film era. His daring stunts, deadpan expression, and inventive gags in films like The General and Sherlock Jr. made him a legend. At the height of his fame in the 1920s, Keaton earned millions and was admired worldwide. But when sound films arrived, his career took a devastating turn. After signing with MGM, he lost creative control, and his movies suffered. A bitter divorce, alcoholism, and poor financial decisions drained his fortune. By the 1930s, Keaton was nearly forgotten, reduced to working behind the scenes as a gag writer just to survive. Though he later found small roles in television and commercials, he never regained his former wealth or stardom. When he died in 1966, Keaton lived modestly, far from the glory days of his career. Still, his influence on comedy remains timeless. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was one of the most gifted yet tragic figures of Hollywood's golden age. With her striking looks and intense performances, she was hailed as a rising star in the 1930s, appearing in films like Come and Get It and Son of Fury. But Farmer was fiercely independent and often clashed with the rigid Hollywood studio system. Her outspoken nature, combined with struggles with mental health and heavy drinking, made her a target for gossip and scandal. By the 1940s, she was institutionalized, enduring years of brutal treatments that destroyed much of her spirit and career. Attempts at a comeback failed, leaving her to live quietly out of the spotlight. In 1970, she died of cancer at only 56, nearly penniless and largely forgotten by the industry that once promised her greatness. Farmer's story stands as one of Hollywood's darkest cautionary tales about talent, independence, and vulnerability. Lon Chaney Jr. Lon Chaney Jr., son of the legendary Man of a Thousand Faces, Lon Chaney, carved out his own place in Hollywood history with his unforgettable role in The Wolf Man, 1941. He went on to portray other classic monsters, including Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and The Mummy, making him the only actor to play all four of Universal's iconic horror characters. Despite this success, Chaney's career was marked by struggle. Unlike his father, he was often typecast and rarely given opportunities to show his full range as an actor. As the horror craze faded, work became inconsistent, and his battles with alcoholism and poor health grew worse. Financial difficulties followed, and many of his later roles were in low-budget productions. By the time of his death in 1973 at age 67, Chaney was nearly penniless, living a modest life far removed from his earlier fame. His legacy, however, still haunts cinema. Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll was one of Disney's brightest child stars of the 1940s and 1950s. With his wide-eyed charm, he captured hearts in films like Song of the South and Treasure Island, and later became the voice and model for Disney's animated Peter Pan. For a time, it seemed like he had everything: talent, fame, and a promising future. But Hollywood can be cruel, especially to child actors. As Bobby grew older, studios lost interest, and his youthful appeal faded. Struggling to find work, he turned to drugs, which only deepened his problems. By his 30s, Driscoll was estranged from his family, broke, and drifting between jobs. In 1968, at just 31 years old, he was found dead in an abandoned New York building. His identity wasn't discovered until a year later, after a fingerprint match. From Disney stardom to tragedy, Bobby Driscoll's story remains one of Hollywood's saddest tales. George Reeves. George Reeves became a household name in the 1950s as television's Superman in Adventures of Superman. To millions of fans, he was the Man of Steel, invincible, strong, and heroic. But off-screen, Reeves faced a much darker reality. Despite his fame, the role typecast him so heavily that Hollywood refused to see him as anything but Superman. Film offers dried up, and he struggled to find meaningful work. His salary from the series was modest, and poor financial management left him with little security. By the late 1950s, Reeves was frustrated, depressed, and nearly broke. On June 16, 1959, he was found dead in his Los Angeles home from a gunshot wound. The official ruling was suicide, though conspiracy theories of foul play still persist. Behind the cape and the smile, George Reeves lived a life of financial strain and personal despair, a tragic fate for television's first Superman. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle was one of the biggest stars of silent film comedy, literally and figuratively. At the height of his career in the 1910s and early 1920s, he was a beloved screen comedian, rivaling even Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Arbuckle signed a historic contract with Paramount Pictures worth over $1 million, making him one of the highest-paid actors of his time. Audiences adored his slapstick style, and Hollywood saw him as a box-office goldmine. But in 1921, everything changed. Arbuckle became embroiled in a scandal after the death of actress Virginia Rappe during a party in San Francisco. Though he was tried 3 times and ultimately acquitted, the media circus destroyed his reputation. Studios distanced themselves, his films were banned in many theaters, and he was branded as a villain in the public eye. Financial ruin quickly followed. Once one of the wealthiest actors in Hollywood, Arbuckle was left struggling to find work, reduced to directing under pseudonyms. Though he attempted a small comeback, the damage to his career and finances was irreversible. He lived the rest of his life in the shadows, far from the fame and fortune he had once enjoyed. In 1933, just as Warner Brothers had offered him a potential return to feature films, Arbuckle died of a heart attack at age 46. Once a comedy king, he died broke and disgraced, a tragic example of how swiftly Hollywood can turn on its own.